One day, I want to be able to draw from my imagination like Kim Jung Gi. And to get good at anything, you have to do it every day, right? Well, to test that, I drew from my imagination every single day for 30 days straight. But did I get better? No. In fact, in a lot of ways, I got worse. Because this is how I was drawing before the challenge started, and this is how I was drawing during the challenge. So, if you don't want to be doomed making the same mistakes as I did, here are 3 lessons I learned after drawing from imagination for 30 days straight. By the way, this video is kindly sponsored by Skillshare. More about them later. As I began the challenge on day 1, I could feel the nerves hitting me already. I was feeling the pressure, and as a result, I wasn't really willing to take risks. Come to day 2, I had spent the day at the museum, and I had gotten more used to being recorded, and the result was the best drawing I would make all of that week. I felt looser, and as a result, my drawings had more character. I took more risks. And that is one piece of the drawing from imagination equation. But what's the second piece? Well, so I'd gone to the museum that day, and as a result, images of animals and anatomy was fresh in my mind, and I was able to use the reference that I had built that day to inform my drawing. So that's it. Drawing from imagination takes a combination of reference and a willingness to take risks. Without any one of those two, you're lacking. If you have a tolerance for risk, but you don't have any reference studied, what'll happen is you'll have generic drawings that don't have much interest. For example, take a look at my spacesuit drawing man here, and notice that I don't have very much detail at all or anything believable to fill the Cosmos or his spacesuit. Because why? Because I don't study astronauts and space-related technology. As a result, my drawings were really bland. What did I do? I filled up the entire page with marker. Come day 4 was when I started to notice the downfall of all of it. I had hit a rock bottom. My willingness to take risks had gone to an all-time low. And this is where I want to introduce a concept called the risk-success paradox. It states that the more you succeed, the less risk you're willing to take, and the less you succeed, the more risk you're willing to take. And you'll notice this pattern throughout the book. Day 1 marked the beginning of our journey, where I was afraid to take risks because I wanted my first day to look good. Come day 2, my willingness to take risks was higher, and as a result, my success was higher. But what happens when your success gets higher is that you want to maintain that success. So what do? You do the same things that worked, or you start wanting to stay in a same formula. And what that did was by day 3, I'd been afraid to reach out of my comfort zone. And as a result, the broad scope of characters I'd drawn here had resulted into a single character because I was scared to do something. I didn't know how to top that to success. And that all epitomized in day 4. Where the success I had had in the previous 3 days put me in a mental state where I didn't want to take risks. So what did? I drew the thing I default to drawing all the time. And my friends in Sheridan used to make fun of me for this. Just drawing shirtless dudes standing in default poses, because that's the go-to when my brain has nothing to draw. It just draws anatomy. And as you can see, my drawing is completely uninspired. And this epitomizes the 2 elements of drawing from imagination. Low risk and low reference. And from there, you can start to see me build back up. Day 5, it's not that interesting, but I'm starting to take some more risks. Day 6, something unlocks again. I was no longer afraid of taking risks because it had gone badly. That my willingness to try new things unlocked a new level of success. And I felt this day that things were getting better. I was on the upswing again. And day 7 is when that coalesced into something really nice. Once again, I had risen out of the valley of risk, and as a result, my success had once again gone up. But what happens when you have a good drawing is that the next day you have a bland one, because you compare your success of yesterday to your process of today, and as a result, you lose the willingness to try new things. It's an interesting pattern that I quickly became aware of, but I couldn't escape. By the way, guys, this video isn't free. You got to pay your tuition fee. That's a like. And if you want to make a charitable donation, you can leave a comment. And thank you. And then day 9 marked a new beginning. After a week of drawing, I'd finally felt like I was getting comfortable with drawing from imagination, with playing with forms. I was aware of the risk-success paradox, and I was able to take more control of it. But then we get to day 10. Day 10 is probably my favorite drawing of the month. It's something I'm really proud of, and in hindsight, I realized it epitomized lesson 2. But before we get into lesson 2, a quick word from our sponsor. If you're watching this, you're interested in drawing. I am. But maybe you want to learn animation or sculpting or painting. I do. And that's where the sponsor for today's video, Skillshare, comes in. That's right. Skillshare is the largest online learning platform in the world. And I've used them since 2019 to make this animation using Adobe After Effects. Wow. But since then, they've added new features, one of them called Paths, which compiles all relevant courses into one mega course. From categories like animation, business, or productivity. My favorite is Brent Eveston's Art and Science of Drawing, which is a 7-hour course teaching you everything you need to know about the basics of drawing. Well, that looks mighty cool, Broken Draw, but what about a poor soul like me who wants to test out the course before I know if I want to buy it? And the best part of all is you can get that for free. For free? That's right, the first 500 people who sign up with my link in the description will get 1 free month of Skillshare, and you can watch that entire course. Thank you again, Skillshare, for sponsoring this video. Let's get back to it. So what made this drawing succeed more than any other drawing throughout the month? In order to find that out, let's compare it to drawings later down the line. Day 11, we still maintain some quality that helps drawings from imagination succeed. But you'll very quickly come to see that our work quickly becomes more and more complex, right? More lines, more values, more objects. But if you've watched any of my other videos, you know that drawing from imagination is not about how complex you can make an object, but it's about how simple you can make it. And that's it. My drawing on day 10 succeeded because it was simple. When you're drawing from imagination, simplicity succeeds, right? Because drawing from imagination is a balancing act of thinking of perspective and form and texture and objects sharing a space all at the same time in your head. You cannot overthink it. So what do you have to do? You have to think simply. And the drawings in the rest of my sketchbook are hints to this sort of mentality. Look how often I'm practicing just basic forms. If you cannot imagine the human body in basic forms, you're not going to be able to draw them from your mind. And on day 14 is when I really clocked that. I noticed as I was drawing, I was able to think of these drawings in simplified forms and on top of them go over them in textures and go over them with detail. But I unlocked sort of a renaissance period at this point where thinking of these forms is a bit easier, and you'll see where it all goes wrong once again. Day 16, I was thinking simply. You can see how simple all these shapes are. And because I was thinking simply, I was able to bring out appeal. This is something that you see throughout Kim Jung Gi's teachings and Peter Han's teachings, and they teach this in animation even. If you cannot draw your character or the environment simply, you don't understand it. In fact, Albert Einstein said this famously, that if you can't explain something simply, then you don't understand it well enough. And day 17 epitomizes my inability to explain something simply. My brain was thinking too much about every detail. Notice the complexity of my hands and the nuance of my anatomy. All it did was overload my working memory. Your brain is like a computer, and your computer only has a certain amount of random access memory. And if you're not drawing simply, you're doing the equivalent of having 37 tabs open on Google and wondering why your computer won't operate. You have to simplify. I've talked about that in a previous video that I highly recommend if you want to build your skill of drawing from imagination. And as we get to day 18, I have something to confess. On day 18, I missed a day. I failed the challenge. And I want to tell you guys that I had a really busy schedule, or that it was just hectic and I just didn't find the time. But the truth is, it's much lamer than that. I just didn't draw that day. At the time, I didn't understand why, because in fact, the days leading up to the challenge, day 14, day 15, day 16, I was more busy than I'd been the entire year. It was coming to be the end of my semester. I had work and I had this challenge to finish. Yet I was able to do it all. When the dust had settled and I was finally in the clear, I just missed a day. And only now can I understand why that happened. And that's lesson 3. In the beginning of drawing from imagination, things were going great. Every day I was learning something. Every day it became easier to summon up forms from my mind and play with space like Kim Jung Gi or Peter Han seemed to do so effortlessly. I learned more. I felt more inspired. I knew what I wanted to study. As you can see, I filled this entire sketchbook in the time span of this challenge because I wanted to draw more and more, because drawing from imagination taught me what I needed to learn. But then something started to happen after day 17. I realized I had a problem. The time I could have spent learning the things that drawing from imagination was teaching me wasn't there because I had to draw from my imagination. Gradually, something that was so helpful to me started becoming something that was holding me back. And that's when I realized that drawing from imagination is a great teacher, but a bad friend. Like a bad friend, it does not care about your goals. It just wants you to spend time with it. Like a bad friend, it holds you back from the things you want to most accomplish. And like a bad friend, you notice it no longer brings out your best. I found myself uninspired. I found myself going to the paper because I had to. And as a result, most days my work was bland. Most days it just became a process of going to the paper. Now, some days there were exceptions. Some days my commitment forced me to try new things, like a dying friendship that you fill with new activities. If you're ever going go-karting with your friends, that's a bad sign. I'm kidding. That didn't mean I didn't have fun some days or that I wasn't learning, but I knew that I was being held back. Right? Some days it went well, but other days my mind was completely dry of inspiration, and I was doing the drawings just to have the drawings done. And as you can see, it became ugly. I tried drawing in Copics to revitalize my interest, but it only helped a little bit. So those are the 3 lessons I learned throughout the month. Now you know the mistakes I made, but if you don't do something about them, you're bound to repeat them. So I'll leave you with 3 things you can do today to actually see improvement in your drawing from imagination. Number 1, remind yourself to always be taking risks. And you can lower the stakes if you have to. 1, don't record the drawings every day, right? 2, draw on paper that you don't care about. And 3, remember what you're doing it for. You're drawing for the joy of drawing. Don't bind yourself to a commitment like I did. It will take the life out of your enjoyment. Try new things. The only way I kept it interesting at the end was to play around with mediums and topics that I didn't know. Right? I draw from marker and I found a new passion that I wanted to explore. Number 2, spend 80% of your time studying reference and 20% of your time drawing from imagination. Like I said, it's a great teacher. You go to it when you need feedback, when you need help. Drawing from imagination is fantastic for that. It will let you know very quickly the concepts that you understand and the concepts that you don't. But if you spend every day with drawing from imagination, you'll find yourself held back, doing less than you could, learning less than you could, being less than you could, because it is an overcommitted relationship and it wants to keep you with it. And number 3 is drawing simply. In order to create anything from imagination, you have to be able to think about it as a simplified form. And to learn how to do that, I'd highly recommend this video I made about drawing the 5 basic forms and why you need to. Don't forget to pay your tuition fee and let me know what you want to see next. I'll see you in the next video. Bye bye.